Bad news, folks. I don't think this rookie receiver class has a Malik Neighbors or a Brian Thomas Jr. We might not even find a Ladd McConkey, at least in terms of immediate fantasy impact. Or will we? I sure didn't expect a year ago that McConkey was about to finish 13th among wideouts and climb into round 2 of redrafts by his second season. So, is the next version of that guy hiding in our rookie rankings right now? We'll start sorting that out today. A fresh Draft Sharks podcast comes your way right now. Welcome to episode 3 of the Draft Sharks Prospect Series. I'm Matt Schauf, along with Jared Smola and Shane Halliman. Today, we will take aim at the 2025 wide receiver class. Shane, before we get specific on the players, what's your overview of this group?
It's okay. It's an average group. I think we've had such good years. You mentioned Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., et cetera, last year at the top, and deep groups that could extend into day 2 and early day 3 as impact players. I don't think we really have that this season. We have Travis Hunter being drafted top 5 because he's a two-way player, and then you have guys that may or may not go at the end of round 1 and into round 2. I think you have some decent athletes that aren't great players, some great players that aren't great athletes. There's just not a lot of full profiles here that I love, and I think that makes this receiver class for us in fantasy a little weaker than we're used to.
We've just been spoiled by the last handful of wide receiver classes being so good. I think if you look at the last, 10 to 15 years, this class is probably, right in the middle somewhere. I think it's average, like Shane said. I think to me, it lacks excitement at the top, beyond Travis Hunter, I guess, if we'll get into him, is he even going to play wide receiver? But I think the wide receiver 5 through 12, I think it's fine. I think I keep finding myself thinking this guy could be a really nice wide receiver 3 in fantasy, maybe a wide receiver 2. I just think we lack the players that could be true difference makers. I think that's what makes this class fall short of the last few we've had.
And that is why we are here today. We're going to talk through the top 5 names, not only in our current rookie wide receiver rankings, but also it looks like the consensus top 5 at the moment before we have landing spots for any of these guys. We are also, though, going to hit on 4 other potential sleepers in this class. You can find rookie wide receiver rankings already at draftsharks.com. 44 guys on that list for Dynasty purposes, all of those with 3D value plus ratings. 25 of those players have projections for 2025. Of course, that list is going to grow as we get landing spots for all of these rookie wideouts. We're not going to go in order of those rankings on the show, and that's primarily because the most interesting player currently resides at number 5. That's Colorado's Travis Hunter, who Shane already alluded to. I just finished saying that there's no Malik Neighbors in this class. If there is that type of player, then it seems like Travis Hunter has the best shot at it. Of course, the question with him is not, is he going to go early? Yeah, it sure seems like he's going to. It's not, is he good? Yeah, he just won the Heisman playing both sides of the ball like a star. So the question here, Shane, is, will Travis Hunter be primarily a wide receiver? As we get closer to the draft, it seems to be leaning more in that favor after we started with him being expected to play a corner and kind of sprinkle in his wide receiver stuff.
It does. It seems like if a team's going to take him in the top 5, and the betting odds at the time that we're recording this are leaning heavily to number 2, to the Cleveland Browns, that they're going to use him primarily as a receiver. It doesn't mean that Travis Hunter isn't going to play defense. So I think there's still some expectations to temper there, but it makes him the top of this receiver class for sure, and possibly the 102 in one quarterback leagues if we're confident with that. Because I think he has that kind of CeeDee Lamb quick twitch ability. If he plays wide receiver full time from the slot, he can just get open so quickly. And we saw that this past year with the Heisman Trophy season, 96 catches, over 1,200 yards, 15 touchdowns, after being kind of the number 2 guy in 2023, where corner was definitely more the focus for him. I think we saw that switch this past year when they wanted to showcase Shedeur Sanders and showcase the offense a little bit more. So he has a good feel for the position. I mean, he's not a physical guy. He doesn't beat the press well. He just gets open and has great leaping ability, great ball tracking. The hands are there. I think if a team utilizes Travis Hunter well, it's good. My fear is if he does play 2 ways, even a little bit, there are definitely plays where he is winded, to say the least, in college, playing both corner and receiver. He's not playing at 100%. That scares me because the pros is a whole different level. I think very quickly, whether it's receiver or corner, the team's going to have to make a decision on him.
Yeah, I mean, you can't go to the pros and play both ways at positions where you spend basically all of your time running. I mean, that's just not a viable strategy unless you are that much further ahead of everybody else talent-wise, and that's just not going to be the case when you move to the pros. So we're going to have to wait until after the draft to really get the answer to our question of how much is Travis Hunter going to play wide receiver? What's his new team's plan going to be? In our rookie model, though, Jared, Travis Hunter already leads the wide receiver class in model score, while we await that last piece of draft capital. And he's actually closer to Ashton Genty in the overall ratings than he is to number 2 wide receiver Tet McMillan. So it's a player we should be excited about.
Yeah, like you said, Matt, clear number 1 wide receiver in our rookie model, clear number 1 wide receiver in Lance Zierlein's film grades. I think Hunter is the most talented wide receiver in this class. You look at his 2024 season, obviously the big raw numbers, over 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. His market shares, 32% of the team's yards, 43% of the touchdowns. They fall short of Tet McMillan, who we're going to talk about coming up here. But again, Hunter did that. He was also playing defensive back too, so context definitely matters here. He's just one of those guys that moves differently on the field. I'm sure the film guys can describe it better than that. But I think, when I watched Odell Beckham in college, I kind of thought the same thing. Even Malik Neighbors a bit last year. It just looks different. It looks easy for him out there. Like Shane said, gets a ton of separation. He's only 6 foot, 188 pounds, but Hunter is so good in contested situations. You can see it on the film. You see it in the numbers. He had a 63% contested catch rate for his career, 65% last year. So super exciting player. Again, like we've been saying, though, it's just, even if he's primarily a wide receiver, is he a 90% route guy or is he a 70% route guy? That's a big difference. If at 70%, you have to be super, super efficient to keep up with those guys that are playing nearly almost every snap. So that's going to be the tricky part. And I think we'll know more after the draft, but it might not be until August. It might not be until September till we actually know what Hunter's NFL team's going to do with him this year.
It might not even be till November or beyond. So there's potential for him to be a frustrating fantasy asset, but he's good enough that we should watch it closely, wait it out and draft him as long as we are expecting him to at least play a good bit of receiver early on. We'll see what they say. I have to admit that I also hope that it doesn't end up being the Browns, because that's just not a team that I trust to leverage what players bring, but that seems to be where things are headed right now. You will find Travis Hunter ranked and profiled among the 43 wide receivers in our second annual rookie prospect guide, 100 players included overall. You will find Draft Sharks model scores for each guy, pros, cons, as well as Shane's player comps for every player listed. Going through really just those can be fun, I think. Just looking through the list, getting ready for this show brings back some memories of players we used to love, some guys who never lived up to the hype we thought we were going to love, and then they did nothing for our fantasy team. So, that can give you some pause about a player that might be getting you excited in the lead up to the NFL draft. You can get that guide absolutely free at draftsharks.com right now. Check the show notes for the link to download it today. And we're going to update the whole freaking thing one more time after the NFL draft. Next up on the wide receiver list is the guy who currently leads our rookie wide receiver rankings. It is Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona. His current rookie model score would have actually ranked slightly ahead of Rome Odunze for third in that big time wide receiver class we've mentioned from last year. That could change once we get his actual draft position. Maybe McMillan goes later in round 1 and that drops him below those first round guys from last year. But, Shane, that kind of sets up some level of expectation for a guy who was very productive at Arizona.
Very productive, very unique player at 6'4", 219. And I think he moves like he's kind of a smaller receiver, though he has that long stride and the long arms. I comped him to Drake London in the rookie guide. I think very similar profiles. Probably won't go as high as London. And I think something we kind of learned with London that I think McMillan might be better as a big slot receiver. He played less than a quarter of his snaps from the slot, but those were some of the best reps to me on film because of his movement and kind of quick twitch ability to break into routes, break out of routes, made him very difficult to cover. So consistent, 8+ touchdowns every season, 1,300 plus yards over the last 2 seasons. We did see him shut down by Travis Hunter when they played. So in terms of, playing against a top level corners, I think is where Tet McMillan struggled. Very good against zone coverage, but I think some of the man coverage abilities need some work. Just want a bit more separation from McMillan. That always scares me with some of these bigger top receivers. We've seen those type of players bust out a little bit. So I have some reservations, but I think McMillan, the production, the size, the athleticism, the consistency, broke out at 18 years old, checks a lot of the boxes for what should be a good fantasy receiver.
Jared, there have been some years in the past where you had issues with bigger receivers who had trouble separating. What's your take on McMillan heading in?
Yeah, and I have that in my notes here, so I wanted to bring it up. I mean, first of all, I love Tet McMillan because I think from a production standpoint, like it's awesome. Like Shane said, broke out early, led Arizona with 8 touchdowns as a true freshman. He actually led all freshmen in the entire country with 702 receiving yards that year in 2022. And then 2 straight massive seasons the last 2 years, over 1,300 yards. The market shares were big. The yards per route run were strong. So everything on paper looks awesome. I like the tape too. I think, like Shane said, he's a big body, but he plays smaller in good ways. I think Drake London's a good comp. I think T. Higgins. I see a lot of T. Higgins in Tetairoa McMillan's game as well. But yeah, the lack of separation is a concern. I've had issues with those types of wide receivers in the past, overvaluing them. And I think you see it in the numbers here with Tetairoa McMillan. 25% of his career targets were contested. And just comparing that to some of these other wide receivers in this class, only 14% of Travis Hunter's career targets were contested, 16% for Emeka Egbuka, 17% for Luther Burden, 18% for Matthew Golden. And again, Tetairoa McMillan was at 25%. Some of you could say he's playing in Arizona. He's clearly the best guy there. Like, even when he's not open, his quarterback's going to force him the ball. So I think it's not all bad, but I think we should at least question whether he's going to be able to create enough separation at the next level and whether that could be an issue for him as we, project him to the NFL.
Going to be interesting to watch how long he stays on the board, because when mock drafts first started coming out, he was up there consistently inside the top 10. Now he seems to be sliding more toward the 20s. So we'll see exactly where he lands, and that'll maybe help instruct what we should expect from McMillan and what the NFL thinks about him in general. He's one of the first Dynasty value profiles that we posted on the site this year. It's gotten some updates, so you can find that on draftsharks.com right now. I'll also link that in the show notes. There's actually a pretty sizable gap currently between McMillan and the next few wideouts on our list, who are grouped pretty closely together in that rookie model score, as well as the 2025 projections. Matthew Golden will get to next. He's actually 4th in our rankings, 4th among that group in model score right now, but he seems to be on the rise. Daniel Jeremiah has him as the top wideout going in round 1, has him now about 10 spots ahead of Tetairoa McMillan in his most recent mock draft. There's something that gives me pause about Golden. Like, when we started this whole process, I was like, ooh, that guy is an exciting talent. I, of course, watched him in the playoffs like most people, more than during the regular season. Then he blazes the 40 at the combine. It's like, oh, this guy looks kind of exciting. But then when everybody else starts getting similarly excited, then you have to dig a little deeper. And Jared, I've got some reservations with Matthew Golden at what looks like his increasing valuation. What about you?
Yeah, me too. When we started this process, he was like, this could be a kind of intriguing, like, round 3 in the NFL draft sleeper type, maybe like a round 2 pick in Dynasty rookie drafts. But now there's a lot of mock drafts. You see, I was reading Mel Kiper's from this morning, and he has Matthew Golden as the first wide receiver off the board. It's easy to see why people could fall in love with Golden. He has the 4.29 speed. He's a fluid route runner, really, really good ball skills. That's what I was most surprised and impressed by when I did his profile up on the site right now. I was really impressed with the ball skills for a smaller wide receiver, but the production just does not stack up from what you want to see from a round 1 NFL draft pick. Golden's freshman season at Houston might have been his most impressive, honestly. He was top 3 on that team in catches, receiving yards, and touchdowns. His 7 touchdowns that year were a school record by a true freshman, 2nd in the entire country among freshmen. But he didn't really take a step forward in his 2nd season at Houston. Then he transfers to Texas, and like the raw numbers are okay, right? He did lead Texas in receiving yards and touchdowns, but the market shares are not that strong. He only saw a 16% target share last year, 27% of the team's receiving yards, 27% of the receiving touchdowns. Both those marks are outside the top 25 wide receivers that were at the combine. Golden was just 28th among the combine receivers in PFF receiving grade, tied for 31st in yards per route. And when I was digging into him for that article, what really scares me and surprised me how bad he was against man coverage, not just among like draft eligible receivers, but in the entire nation. 392 qualifying wide receivers. Matthew Golden, 327th in yards per route against man coverage, 215th in PFF receiving grade against man coverage. And he had similar numbers in 2023. He was better against man as a freshman, but the last 2 years he was not good. And that's surprising for a guy who obviously has plenty of athleticism. So I think at minimum, he's someone that's going to need developing. He's probably not ready to step into a big role right away. I see the tools. I think there's upside here because of the speed, because of the athleticism, because of the ball skills. But I think people have gotten a bit out in front of their skis with Matthew Golden.
Yeah, Shane, this guy's up to 19th overall and 2nd among all wide receivers on the NFL mock draft database consensus big board, despite never actually leading his college team in receptions for a season. Do we need to pump the brakes a little bit on Matthew Golden?
I think we should. The NFL's not going to. I would make a pretty hefty bet that he'll be the first receiver off the board. I think that 4.29 speed with the playoff play that Matthew Golden had throughout those games is impressive enough that a team's going to take him. And as Jared said, there's a lot of positives. I think he's a master against zone coverage. He uses his speed well to get to holes. And I think Quinn Ewers, often the quarterback at Texas, did not utilize Golden enough against zone coverage early in the season. So the athleticism, the body control, yeah, he has good catch technique, but often can have focus drops. And I think the man coverage problems that Jared brought up are the biggest thing. Because it's not just that he's not as good against man coverage, but if you watch a handful of games, 5-6 games, you'll see him just give up multiple plays, just stop, not run, clearly not running because he's covered and he's not going to get the ball. And so he's not given the effort. I think that's why those yards per route run against man is so low, because you can't throw him the football in that case. So I have some questions about that. But by all counts, off the field, high character, I think that's going to sway some people too, with some questions potentially about one of the other receivers that we'll talk about. I just think he's going to be overdrafted in the NFL draft and thus ends up overdrafted in rookie drafts.
Shane, do you think Golden plays like a 4.29 guy? Because in the 5 or 6 games I watched, I didn't see that type of speed. I didn't see him like running away from everyone else, either after the catch or in deep shots. And just watching Texas, like to me, I would have guessed Isaiah Bond would have ran a faster 40. He looks like the faster player on the field to me. Golden's fast, but I think the 4.29 kind of overstates how fast he is, just from the games I watched.
Hey, Isaiah Bond would have guessed that he was the faster 42.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the expectation. And I think Bond plays faster on the field than Golden does, despite running in the 4.4s. Yeah, I'm with you. Golden doesn't run away from people. Yeah, I think there were multiple plays this season where he had a breakaway run and got caught by corners that don't run in the 4.2s, certainly. So I don't think that's play speed by any means.
I won't pretend that fantasy analysts know how to build an NFL team better than actual NFL personnel people, but there are definitely things that have been revealed in fantasy research that should be factored into NFL drafting more than it seems like they are. Breakout age, market shares, two very simple ones that you never hear about in NFL draft coverage. And maybe it's being used behind the scenes more than we're being allowed to know, but you can kind of point to that with some of the guys who end up getting picked too early. It's the league, showing some recency bias. This guy was excellent this past year. We can coach him over the problems that he had earlier, as opposed to saying, well, this guy's been awesome since he was 18. This guy was dominating market share on this team, even if the numbers don't look as gaudy as they do with other players. So I think that the NFL would do itself some favors if more personnel people, got over their pride on scouting a little bit and kind of adopted some more of that data-driven stuff. Speaking of data-driven stuff, Jared did just publish that Matthew Golden Dynasty Value Report over the weekend that he was referring to earlier, including pros and cons, as well as an interesting team fit for Matthew Golden. So check that out. Of course, like the other things, you'll find the link for that in the show notes. Shane, I'm going to go to you first on Emeka Egbuka because I can see Brutus Buckeye looking over your shoulder at me, and we all want to know what to expect from the latest Ohio State receiver entering the NFL.
I love Emeka Egbuka. I think for fantasy, there's a debate of what he will be for us, but the film is impressive, and again, has been since he was a freshman. The cutting, the footwork, I mean, he's a slot master. That's where he's going to play in the NFL. He's going to be a slot receiver, slot only, but great hands catcher. Yeah, gets a little physical down the field too. He's not afraid to mix it up if there is coverage and some deeper plays. Against Oregon, both games this year, they used Egbuka a little bit more outside and had him go and do some out and up routes, and he was leaping for balls. So I think there's a high floor with him. A better athlete than I expected. His relative athletic score came out to 9.72, so a 97 percentile athlete with the 4.48 40. Short shuttle was good. Like everything that should line up for Egbuka does. The question is just ceiling. I think he has a very high floor. We're talking about a player that could be a PPR master that's just getting targets, a ton of targets, catching near 100 passes is possible. I think it's in his wheelhouse in the right system. He's probably not an elite wide receiver 1X that's going to dominate. That's going to be the decision making in your rookie draft. Do you want a player in Egbuka I think is pretty safe, is going to be someone that could be a starter for you, at least in the flex, but maybe doesn't have that upside, especially in half point or non-PPR to really be a difference maker.
Full disclosure here, Shane did go to Ohio State. He actually has on his wedding band the Ohio State logo, so he's literally married to the Buckeyes. So, Jared, somebody who's a little bit more separated from this, is Emeka Egbuka similar to Jackson Smith and Jigba heading into the NFL?
I think that was a fair assessment from Shane. I think Egbuka might be the safest wide receiver in the entire class, and safer than Hunter because we just know that Egbuka is not going to be trying to play a second position, and then safer than even Tetairoa McMillan. I think there are some less concerns with Egbuka about the separation stuff. I mean, you want production. This guy leads Ohio State in career receiving yards, and there have been some pretty damn good wide receivers that have gone to Ohio State, especially lately. Egbuka leads the entire group with over 2,800 career receiving yards. Had the breakout as a sophomore in 2022, and that came alongside Marvin Harrison Jr., and their numbers were very similar that season. Harrison had about 100 more receiving yards, 3 more catches. The yards per route run that year, Marvin Harrison 3.18, Egbuka 3.01. So again, just behind a guy who some people thought was one of the best prospects to come into the NFL in a long time, in Marvin Harrison last year. Egbuka had an ankle injury in 2023, missed 3 games, was kind of limited in some others. So I think that was a down year for him, but he bounced back nicely last year with 81 catches, over 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns, and that came alongside Jeremiah Smith, who I think Shane can tell us more about him, but I think he is an even better prospect than Marvin Harrison Jr. was. So Egbuka's played alongside some really talented wide receivers and produced in spite of that. You like that going to the NFL because he's going to be obviously playing alongside a bunch of talented receivers in the NFL. So I do think the question with Egbuka is, what is the upside? To me, his upside is like Amon-Ra St. Brown, who obviously has landed in an ideal situation with what was a strong OC in Ben Johnson and has become this fantasy force. I think that's unlikely for Egbuka, but I think, again, if he were to happen to land in a spot like that, I think, like Shane said, he could kind of be that, PPR cheat code, just, racking up 100 plus catches per season if he lands in the right spot.
Shane, should we add a little credit here for Egbuka not getting, totally overtaken by Jeremiah Smith?
Yeah, Jeremiah Smith will be the 101 in the 2027 rookie drafts. It's already is set in stone, chiseled in stone. So the fact that Egbuka still was utilized how he was, I mean, there definitely was Jeremiah Smith games, that there's games where when teams keyed in, I mean, Egbuka was always wide open. And that's what I love to see for a guy that's probably not going to be the number one receiver on his NFL team. He might even get some more targets if that coverage is looking at someone else.
This is the time of year where both we and the NFL can just kind of get caught looking at and for exciting players as opposed to the guys who just get it done over and over again. And Egbuka is the kind of guy who can sneak through. So make sure that you don't let him sneak through. We'll see exactly where he settles in our rankings, but probably is going to wind up being a middle to, front half of the middle first round pick in rookie drafts, and a guy that just won't let you down. And we'll see how high he can climb. You can see Shane's full breakdown of Egbuka on draftsharks.com. Does call him a perfect slot receiver in there, but also points out what could limit Egbuka's fantasy potential over the long term. Luther Burden, next up on our list, sits third in our rookie rankings currently, just ahead of Golden on that list, second in 3D value plus rating at the moment among wideouts. Kevin did the write-up on Burden recently. That's on draftsharks.com. He's excited about the long-term outlook. Shane, where are you starting on Burden heading into the NFL draft?
I'm torn, like most of this receiver class. I feel like every receiver's like, I like it, but, and I think Luther Burden's a big like it, but, he was a 5-star recruit coming into college and surprisingly stayed home in Missouri. Elite athleticism has been there since high school. That shows up on film time and time again. Good hands. He's elusive after the catch, really hard to tackle. Burden looks like a player that is exciting. I mean, he hits that highlight meter is very high. Burden's highlights are great, but he's just not very physical. When he's gotten jammed at the line, I think that's where, when they try to have him run more traditional routes, that's been the problem. We saw 2 years ago in 2023, Burden really broke out. Missouri had one of the best offenses in the SEC, 86 catches, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns. Like, okay, here we go. We have an elite receiver. And then Missouri, they lost their entire offensive line. Their running back just regressed. And it was, let's try to get the ball in Luther Burden's hands and hope something happens. So he went down to 61 catches, didn't even exceed 700 yards, only 6 touchdowns, a lot of screens, a lot of drags, a lot of very short things to get the ball in Luther Burden's hands. and hope. The Alabama game, I mean, Alabama just keyed in, was ready to try to intercept passes if they were going to throw that screen, and they had to go away from Burton. He had 3 catches for 3 yards. So it's really hard to love a player that's not running a full route tree, that we haven't seen do what an NFL receiver does, but it has the elite athleticism. And then there's some concerns off the field. We found out in the Bob McGinn prospect series piece that Burton really didn't practice this year. That was the promise. It's for him not to transfer away. You don't have to practice. And, it's 21-year-old kid's going to say, great, like, I'm not going to practice. So what happens in the NFL? I mean, so I have some questions. There's legit downside, big upside. He could bust out within the first year, or he could be, one of the best fantasy receivers in the league. Either way. Sorry,
Shane. All I got from that was you said Luther Burden has a big butt. Jared, I keep thinking of Rondale Moore here as somebody who's not huge, is physically gifted, has a path where he could be an exciting player, but is probably going to need really big target volume to actually pay off as a fantasy asset, and doesn't seem like he's on that path to get really big target volume. Like, I'm not sure he got that at Missouri, and he should have at least, I would think, dominated target share there, which just wasn't the case.
So I would say your Rondale Moore comp is probably good in that, like, that's like the floor for Luther Burden, which is, basically a 0. I will say, Burden's 206 pounds. He's not Rondale Moore small. My upside comp for Burden is DJ Moore. I think if he hits, it's going to be a DJ Moore type, production profile, usage profile as a pro. So I think, that's kind of the 2 spectrums. Obviously a wide range of outcomes here for Burden. He to me is the toughest evaluation in this wide receiver class. Like Shane said, had the huge 2023 season, over 1,200 yards, 9 touchdowns, 35% of Missouri's receiving yards, 39% of the team's touchdowns, 3.29 yards per route run that year. That would have ranked 4th among the 49 combine wide receivers from this past year. I don't know what happened last year. I mean, that's good context from Shane about the offensive line and losing their running back, but it was the same coaching staff from Missouri, same quarterback. What worries me most last year is that Burden sunk from a 33.5% target share in 2023 to just 20% last year. He was out targeted by Theo Weiss last year, who I know was in this wide receiver class, but he's a day 3 guy, probably even goes undrafted. So it's tough to figure out what happened last year with Burden. It's scary, but I do think 2023 matters too, right? And his 2023 season was, I think, as good as any receiver in this class as far as a single season goes. So that just kind of shows you the upside of this guy, but also the downside. The other thing you'll hear people mention with Burden as a knock against him is all the damage he did on passes at or around the line of scrimmage. 22% of his yards for his career came on passes behind the line of scrimmage. In that big 2023 season, 48% of his catches came behind the line of scrimmage. So it was just, screens, short stuff, swing passes to Burden. So it's like, is he going to get that stuff at the NFL level? Is his team going to be willing to, make him that focal point that Missouri did? I will say, though, when Burden did go deep, he was effective at Missouri. Over the last 2 years, he caught 19 of his 41 deep targets. He had a 99.9 PFF receiving grade on deep targets in 2023. He was 96.7 in 2024. That was still a top 50 mark in the country. So, based on what we've seen at Missouri, he can do the deep stuff. Maybe he just wasn't asked to enough. I think I'm leaning more to being in on Burden at this point, but he, to me, is a really big draft capital guy. I want to see what the NFL thinks about him. I think if he gets in round 1, that's a massive win. Even if he stays inside the top 50 picks, I think that's going to be enough for me to probably be in on Luther Burden.
It's going to depend entirely, to me, on price, and the whole thing with all of the short passes is another factor that's bringing Rondale Moore back to me. Like, I like how much he got the ball that year, and I like what you said about how he can do the downfield stuff. But if you're running a college offense and you have this star receiver who can do that stuff, aren't you trying to do that instead of throwing him the ball half the time at the line of scrimmage? And, maybe it's iffy coaching, or maybe it's, going with what works. Maybe it's a limited quarterback. So, I don't want to say because of this, Luther Burden's not ever going to be good, but that's the part that makes me worry. And if he is, going too early in rookie drafts, I'm gonna be like, you guys can take him. And if I miss out on him, I don't think that it's going to be the kind of thing that I regret for 10 years. I want to look at his mock draftable list of comparable players, because they're pretty high ratings for the level at which they match. And he did all of the combine testing, so it's not, based on screwy stuff. It's not a great list. Tyler Johnson from Minnesota, Ronald Johnson from USC, Antoine Wells from Mississippi in this year's class, Freddie Swain, Cam Phillips, Nick Nash, Kobe Hudson, Malik Knowles, Deontay Burnett, Antonio Gibson. So the best look for him here is a guy who has been a running back in the NFL so far. Are you getting anything from this list, Shane, or should I ignore it and look on the bright side?
No, I think that is the downside. Like, that list is the downside of what Luther Burden can be. Like we talked about Rondale Moore. Our player comp in the rookie guide was Randall Cobb, kind of a unique player, similar to Antonio Gibson, right? A unique player that did a lot of different things, played in the backfield a little bit. You're going to have to use him like Deebo Samuel. You know, I hate everyone says that every year about some prospects, so I apologize for being cliche, but you're going to have to find ways to get him the ball. That he's just not going to be a traditional receiver running every route in the route tree.
Randall Cobb's a good name to bring up. Would he have been anything if he hadn't landed with Aaron Rodgers? Because he hasn't really been anything outside of Aaron Rodgers.
Right, which maybe not. And I think that's what Luther Burden needs. You know, you mentioned the deep stuff. I think a lot of it did fall on poor quarterback play and maybe not practicing and having that connection. Like, I think Luther Burden needs a good relationship with, needs a lot of things to go right for him to be a superstar, but he does have that superstar potential.
Mm-hmm. He is awesome with the ball in his hands. Like, I don't want to take that. Like, he is awesome with the ball in his hands. He had 7.3 yards after catch per reception for his career, 8.4 in that big 2023 season. Like, that part's going to translate. I have no doubt about that. It's just, can he do the other wide receiver stuff? Can he actually get open in, like, you know, non-designed looks to actually get the ball in his hands?
You know who else is awesome with the ball in his hands? Rondale Moore at Purdue. Let's move past that top five now. Of course, we'll talk much more about Burden, and you can read the full profile on draftsharks.com right now. We'll see where he lands. So a landing spot could be key for him. We've got four more names that aren't inside that top five that are a little lower in the rookie wide receiver rankings, but who could be sleepers in your rookie drafts or even in redraft for 2025. First up on the list, Jared, one of your guys, Jayden Higgins from Iowa State, the newest rookie profile on the site as we speak. That's going to change by the time you guys are listening to this show, probably 2 to 3 new players on the site by then. But Higgins is a guy that I've liked more and more as we move through the process. Looks like he brings size, skills, and production, right?
Yeah, I think he's discount Tetairoa McMillan. Very similar size, 6'4", 214 pounds for Jayden Higgins. 91st percentile wingspan, so just a really long player, and you definitely see that on tape with his ability in contested situations. Higgins also ran a 4.47 40, which I think was faster than I would have expected, but that definitely doesn't hurt his case. 85th percentile in the broad and vertical jump. So Higgins ended up with a 9.63 relative athletic score. So really strong there, really strong production the last 2 years. Higgins did start his college career at Eastern Kentucky and didn't put up big numbers there, but transferred to Iowa State the past 2 years. Led the 2023 Iowa State team in receiving yards right out of the gate, 983. And that, by the way, was ahead of Jalen Royals, who's another prospect in this year's wide receiver class that might also go day two, like Jayden Higgins. Higgins beat Royals in receiving yards in 2023. Led the team in catches, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns in 2024. Strong market share numbers for Higgins last year. He was also first in the entire country in PFF receiving grade. Last year, he was 14th in yards per route run among the wide receivers at the combine. So a really nice statistical profile. I mentioned the Tetairoa McMillan thing, though, too, because I think there are similar concerns with Jayden Higgins. I think the number for Tet was, I think it was 25% of his career targets were contested. That number is 23 for Jayden Higgins. So kind of same potential concerns. Can he create enough separation? I will say, though, his metrics versus man coverage are awesome. Last year, Higgins against man coverage, 15th among 138 wide receivers in yards per route run against man coverage. So in terms of actual production, he did not have trouble, separating and producing against man coverage. So fingers crossed that he gets round 2 draft capital. I think if he does, he could definitely be a top 5, top 6 wide receiver in this class.
Some of that's certainly going to be impacted by where a guy plays and how a guy plays. And we're talking about in Higgins and Tetairoa McMillan, 2 guys that play pretty strictly on the outside, where they're more likely to face those contested situations and have balls thrown to them when they are being contested because they're big and athletic. Shane, does Jayden Higgins belong in the talk to maybe slide into the end of round 1, or is that higher than what he brings?
I think he belongs in that talk. It's all year to year is always different. I think this year's class is a little deeper in that first round than last year when we saw Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette maybe a little slightly overdrafted at the end of round 1. But I think Higgins matches up with those type of players. What Jared mentioned about man coverage, I like Higgins against man better. He has a high football IQ. Every route he runs kind of looks very similar, which usually doesn't happen with the big receivers. Usually they're kind of tipping what they're doing, but his comebacks, his curls, his outs, I mean, he's starting that initial get off all the same. And so it's really hard to kind of know what he's going to do. I think some smaller corners really struggled with that. So, the ball tracking's there. I wish he was better about using his size and strength after the catch. I think that's one thing that Higgins he can catch the ball, but he goes down a little bit too easily for his size. I look back at my prospect notes. I'll make some notes on them and go back into my old files and see where it matches up. And one player, I'm not comping him to this or saying this is what Higgins will be in the NFL, but that lined up was Nico Collins. Very similarly, of a player that, had a lot of the higher football IQ stuff, didn't run every route, didn't run the slants and the drags, kind of the easy stuff at Michigan. Higgins wasn't asked to do that. And we saw Collins be able to put that in his game and become a full-time receiver, be well-rounded, be a wide receiver one. I think Higgins does have that kind of potential.
And of course, Nico Collins, a late round pick, but has quickly delivered and continued to deliver, got a big contract, and is certainly a productive member of the Texans right now. Next on the list of these 4 guys to keep an eye on, Jalen Royals of Utah State. Shane, playing at Utah State is not generally a great way to announce yourself to people. Does that factor alone have him going a bit underrated among these rookie wideouts?
I think so. I think those G5 receivers that are in those big power conferences sometimes is where you can find those gems. Royals, to me, lines up a lot with what I saw with Rashee Rice at SMU. Royals 6 foot, 205, started at Georgia Military College and transferred up and was so dominant there that he moved up. Kevin has a really good profile on the site if you want to go real in depth into Royals and see what he can do. Redshirt in 2022 and then just exploded as the top receiver for Utah State. 71 catches, over 1,000 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's not polished, kind of a running back playing receiver. You get the ball in Royals' hands and he is very tough to bring down. Really smart with angles and what he does after the catch. That's kind of how Utah State utilized him. He was on his way in 2024 to a record-breaking season. In 7 games, already had 55 catches, 834 yards, 6 touchdowns, ends up getting hurt and missing the rest of the season. Nothing that's going to linger, but he's a dynamic athlete. And I was scared. I kind of had him lower because I thought he can't really run routes. He doesn't do that. They're just getting the ball in his hands. He goes to the Senior Bowl, goes one-on-one with these corners, and it just the route, every single route was perfect. He's getting separation every single time. And then the 4.42 40 time and the 1.53 10-yard split against ranked opponents this year, Boise State, UNLV, 20 catches, 399 yards, and 3 touchdowns combined in those games. I think when he's forced to be more traditional, like he was against USC, he had some problems. He wasn't getting separation. The ball wasn't getting to him. But if he goes to a team that can develop him, I think Jalen Royals has superstar potential.
Jared, what do you think about Jalen Royals?
Shane alluded to it at the end there. One concern with him would just be the level of competition. Even last year was the big season, but it was only 7 games, and 2 of those games were that USC game Shane talked about. And USC's defense wasn't, I think they were one of the worst defenses in the country last year, right? They have been for a while, but he only had 6 catches, 47 yards in that game. He only had 4 catches for 44 yards against Utah, who I believe was a good defense last season. But I think Shane nailed it with the athleticism and the after the catch stuff. Like if Luther Burden's the best after catch receiver in this class, and I think he is, Royals might be the second best after catch receiver in this class. He last year averaged 7.9 yards after contact per reception. That was 16th in the country among 260 wide receivers with 50 plus targets. So that's a good starting point for him. I do think he's probably going to need some development, probably not a massive year 1 contributor, but the athleticism and that after catch stuff is really exciting for him.
Yeah, you would have liked to have seen an earlier breakout. We love guys that break out early, but loved the market shares at Utah State and looked like he was headed toward a dominant 2024 before that injury. You can read that profile by Kevin. From unknown to unstoppable is how he described Jalen Royals on draftsharks.com. So check that out. Jalen Royals is a guy that I have started to grab toward the end of best ball drafts. As Shane, I know you have increased your projection on him, and as there have been more things kind of revealed to be excited about within the profile there. So an interesting player, certainly heading toward the NFL draft. Jared, Tory Horton might be an interesting player as well from Colorado State. Had a good combine workout, but I don't think you would have picked him if that's all there was to his profile, right?
No, the production's been really strong for Horton at Colorado State in the last 3 years, really. And I think he'd be getting more buzz if not for the injury last year that limited him to 5 games. And unfortunately, I've seen it reported as both a knee and a hamstring injury. So I know Dane Brugler's coming out with his beasts today or tomorrow, and he usually has like the best injury reporting on these guys. So hopefully we'll learn more about Horton's injury at that point, but it's not really a concern because like you said, Matt, he went to the combine, had a strong workout, 4.41 second 40 time, 74th percentile vertical at 6'3", 196 pounds. So he's a leaner receiver, and you definitely see that on tape, but he's got some height. He's obviously got speed, has the vertical and the production. So last year, again, just 5 healthy games for Horton last year, but he had 71 yards per game, a 35% share of his team's yardage, 3.45 yards per route run last year for Tory Horton. That was third among the 49 combine wide receivers. And that all followed the previous 2 seasons for Horton, over 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns in both 2022 and 2023. He topped 2.7 yards per route run each of those seasons. In 2023, he was 16th among 287 qualifiers in PFF receiving grade. So I think he's a bit of a sleeper, just kind of flying under the radar because, his raw production was not that big last year because of the injury.
And we'll have to see how the injury affects his draft capital. I mean, where he goes might very well tell us what the NFL thinks about the recovery, how much longer he might need to be back to full strength. And let me repeat the shout out for Dane Brugler, who I'm quite happy that he has no life outside of football.
Yeah, good for us.
Shane, the last guy on our list, Jack Bech from TCU, in the first rookie mock draft that we did this offseason. I'm honestly just learning the players as we go, looking primarily at Shane's rankings to see who makes sense coming up, but I'm too arrogant a guy to just take the next guy on Shane's list without a reason. So one thing that jumped out to me with Jack Bech as I was going through that process was the team high 43 catches as a freshman at LSU. Now, Kayshon Boutte would have beaten him on that team if he hadn't missed 7 of 13 games that season. But even with Boutte aside, that still would have Jack Bech ahead of Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Trey Palmer on that team. You might know all 3 of those guys from the NFL. So Shane, what do you like about Bech overall here?
He's another slot receiver, but he is maybe the best route runner of the class, right up there with Emeka Egbuka. And that's what I love, because Jack Bech gets separation. No, he's physical at 6'1", 214. He's this big slot that can box you out. He's not going to get bullied, but also has these crisp routes, is explosive. So it's really hard to cover. How do you cover a player that big, that moves that fluidly? His workouts back that up. We're never going to get a 40 time from him. It's not good. Like, the 40 would not be good at all. It's going to be in the 4.6s and probably not the high 4, might be the high 4.6s. So that's the question mark. But aced the Senior Bowl, was crushing routes at the Combine. I thought he was the best route runner at the NFL Combine in those workouts back to back to back. I mean, Jack Bech aced it. He went up against in Kansas this year, a potential top 100 corner in Kobe Bryant, and went for 10 catches, 131 yards, 2 touchdowns. So I think, his athleticism caught up with him a bit late in the season against some teams like Arizona and Cincinnati that had athletic, bigger nickel corners. But I think against most teams, I think Jack Bech is going to be a player that's easy to love and easy to get a lot of passes coming his way. I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field.
If I were him, I wouldn't run a 40 either. I suck at golf, so I just avoid playing golf unless I absolutely need to. I love when there's a guy who early on I'm like, oh, this guy might have something to him. And then he goes to the Senior Bowl and people are like, oh, he was really good. And then he goes to the Combine and people are like, oh, he showed out really well. Jared, what do you think of Jack Bech right now?
I think Shane nailed all of it. I think he's going to be best as a slot receiver, as a pro. I think team fit's probably going to matter for him more than other guys, because he's going to have he defined an offense that kind of accentuates what he does best, right? But again, reading Mel Kiper's mock a few hours ago, Jack Bech, middle of round 2. If he gets that type of draft capital, I think he's going to be rising everyone's Dynasty rookie rankings.
Yeah, beat that group that I mentioned his freshman year at LSU. A couple quiet years after that, but finished it at TCU, outproducing Savion Williams, who is another prospect in this draft. So the production's been there, and there have been things to like since then. Probably won't go early enough that we need him to produce right away in fantasy. So he's going to be interesting to watch for sure through draft weekend and then beyond. If you missed either of our 2 rookie running back shows, you can find them on draftsharks.com. You can find them on our YouTube channel or wherever you like to get your audio pods. Subscribe or follow the Draft Sharks podcast on your chosen platform to make sure that you get notified whenever we drop a new episode. And we will be coming at you every Wednesday and Friday throughout the year. We've got several more shows still in this prospect series, so make sure that you're ready. Make sure you're following along. Next up is a fairly exciting class of tight ends, so be ready for that one. Of course, we put together this series, your 100-player rookie guide, and the powerful Dynasty tools available at draftsharks.com, because we want to be your unfair advantage.